From the heartland of America and the gateway to the West. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever the hell you may be. Broadcasting from an abandoned bunker under second base, surrounded by corn and ghosts. This is Don't You Know? I'm your host, Lyle Tyson, along with Tucker LaBelle, Kyle Ganzen, and Aaron Birds. How you guys doing?
Good, Lyle.
Good,
Good,
good.
Lyle.
So we're fresh off of Super Bowl weekend. Any thoughts as we soak in the last 7 days of the Chiefs and the Eagles game?
Yeah, I will tell
You
you,
know,
I was caught off guard. I thought Philly had the slight edge going in, but I just thought Kansas City would keep it closer. But boy, I tell you what, there's a lot of Iowans who are non-Chiefs fans who really enjoyed the outcome of that game, and just the way they did it, right? They get up 2 touchdowns. What do you see in the NFL? You see these guys let off the gas. No, not Philly. Then they throw that touchdown pass, and I tell you what, as an Iowan, that Cooper DeJean running that pick six back, I tell you what, it was awesome to see. Awesome.
Yeah.
we talked the previous week about thinking it was be a one score game or just a big moment, and Philadelphia came out and really took control of their defense. It just dominated more than any other defense in the last 2-3 years against them, and they just Kansas City could not get in a rhythm at all. And we're hoping that an Iowa guy would have a big play, and DeJean had it, but like I said, just Kansas City just not look like they have been in the last 2 to 3 years. So it was kind of shocking to see them take that loss like that.
Well, it goes back to Mahomes. When you don't let him run around there, you don't let him ad lib. When he's got to make decisions in 2 seconds, he turns into every other quarterback, right? Like, it's all about time. Trust me, I'm a Bears fan. I'm used to my quarterback running for his life, and I know what type of decisions they have to make in short amount of times. But Mahomes couldn't ad lib. He couldn't get outside the pocket, and he actually looked like a human being. So that's interesting because so many times with these dynasties, you see him get exposed just a little bit on what it takes to beat them, and it'll be curious to see next year, how they adjust. And they're obviously going to have to upgrade that offensive line, but yeah, just kind of nice to see a team struggle once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the Chiefs went back to the same defensive scheme as when Tampa Bay beat the Chiefs too. They only rushed 4, and they didn't blitz a whole lot, but they just had different coverages, and transferring into those coverages, right at the snap, so they couldn't read it, and he just looked flustered, Mahomes. And you could actually see like Kelce. I thought he kind of gave up on a lot of plays, and watching the highlights and things after the fact of these guys are extremely flustered. I mean, he only had 2 or 3 targets and only 1 catch, so he looked like even when Mahomes was scrambling, he wasn't, going trying to get open. It was just a long day for them that they're not used to, so hats off to Philly. They went and did a lot of research and exposed Kansas City. But like you said, in the future, these other teams are going to kind of scout that same game plan and see if that's their downfall.
Yeah. Yeah. No, very exciting. Very exciting to see somebody else. I agree with Kyle. It's anyone that knows me knows that I am far from being a Chiefs fan. While I respect, great athletes at any level and any dynasty, you got to have some respect. It was cool to see a different team win. That was really exciting, and for the city of Philadelphia, remarkably exciting. You love to see a city really get behind their team, and they definitely got behind their team. They were all in all the way behind them. It was cool. I didn't get to watch a whole lot in person. I was actually listening to the radio call of most of the game while driving back over the border from Canada, and it was cool to digest a game from radio call again. I think you really get used to seeing everything now, and it's glamour in every angle, and 4K, and you forget how valuable a radio call is. The whoever's calling the game is painting, this visual element in your mind of what's going on. And it's there's something to be said about that I absolutely love. I know towards the end of the game, I stopped for gas right over the border in Detroit, and a very enthusiastic Detroiter was eager to let me know that Kansas City was getting whooped on. He was very excited about that. So it was a fun way to consume a Super Bowl that I hadn't done before. But I will say, huge props to Philly, and yeah, they just did it right all the way through. And now it sounds like Kelce might be eyeing retirement. I hear some rumors of that, which I don't think is anything to be surprised at.
Yeah. I guess and I guess my takeaway from the game is, and like Aaron had said, we talked there a week previously. You're talking it was a point, and then it was a point and a half, and then it went back to zero. And so you get all these odds makers, out in Vegas, and they're playing that money game and that money ball, and then everything kind of like Kansas City kind of pooped their pants, and that's kind of how it went. And I think that I mean, I think as far as the MVP of the game is the defense. I mean, with the takeaways, they had two takeaways, and then the guys on the front line just keeping, like you said, Mahomes into looking like just a regular human being. Gosh, they did it, but there were some serious losers on Sunday. I would have to bet.
One thing we're looking at, we're bringing some former NFL players on the podcast down the road. One thing
Yeah.
I'm curious to ask them is, just like with the Travis Kelce, like at what point do you just say like no more? These tight ends running down the middle of the field, they got, D-backs 20 years ago were 210 pounds, and now they're 250, right? And they're just as big as these tight ends. And I can't wait to ask former NFLers like, hey, when did you know you were done? You look at Marshall Yanda, right? He dropped 60 pounds in a year.
Yeah.
Like just how many calories and what they have to do to put their body to play in those type of games. So that's an interesting storyline with that Kelce. Now he's in love, and I tell you what, he has brought a whole different audience into this game, though. People watching the Super Bowl that are there to watch Caitlin Clark, or there to see a picture of Taylor Swift. I mean, the NFL is going to miss him, I tell you that. But I don't know. We'll see. You might get one more year. He just loves being talked about too, Tucker. You know that. So
He does. He does. I think you bring up an interesting point too in retirement, and kind of like when's the right age, what criteria do you need to meet to feel like you're at a point to be retiring. And I think that age becomes younger and younger for a lot of players with the ability to make serious money off the media side of things. I mean, no longer does somebody retire and they kind of, fade off into the distance. For Travis Kelce, him and his brother having a hugely successful media entity now and a podcast and all this kind of stuff. Well, yeah, he might retire from the game, but he's not going to retire from the public image at all. And I mean, we saw that. We knew it was coming with Tom Brady. There's no question about that, but we see it with him. I think we're going to see that age of retirement continue to get younger and younger. And I think in a lot of ways that's positive, because that just opens up, more floor space for younger and younger guys to get their chances. And so that's one to think about, is I think in every league and every professional sport right now, if you're anything of a public image, you're a little more comfortable going into retirement than a lot of guys were 20 years ago.
I tell you what, you talk Tom Brady, and I tell you, there are some strong feelings about him and announcing out there. The one thing I'll say is Greg Olson, he really took the short end of the stick. He was a great analyst for Fox, kind of had to step aside when Tom came in. Tom's not bad to listen to, but, it's a lot of cliche, right? They want to talk Patriots, they want to talk Super Bowls, but I thought Greg Olson did a really good job. I thought he got the short end of the stick a little bit. So that'll be curious to see if Brady can make the other 8 years of this 10-year deal. But
there's a lot of questions and speculation. I know his, I guess potential or current ownership situation with, I think, the Raiders is a bit of a curious one as well too, because there's a lot of conflict of interest there, and he can do certain things, he can't do other things. At what point does he want to step kind of full blown into the ownership side of things? Because if I'm being honest, if you look at the rest of the time in his contract with them as a broadcaster, I don't think he makes that full contract on his own fruition. I think he's going to step into something, much more lucrative at some point. Um, I don't know. I think of, recent examples of really strong guys turned into figures in the media. And I think the Manning brothers have both done a phenomenal job at it. And the cool thing about them is like they can relate to every age level. They're fun, they're charismatic, they know a lot about football. So if they got to be serious, they can turn the serious on. But what I've seen with them recently in this past season specifically, and even in college football, has been so cool. I mean, it's really fun to consume what they're putting out there, and I think they're a great example of it turned into a positive way and a relatable way. Tom is just a weird one because it's like even when I listen to him, I'm like, this guy's so robotic. Like I don't know if I can really, fully, there's no real like Americana grit which you get from a lot of these broadcasters where you're like, yeah, I can relate to him. He's a good old guy. He's fun. He's engaging. With Tom, it's like, is this guy a robot? Like we're still not really sure. So
I love these guys that transition from the game to the booth. And I love their kind of like, their sayings like Brady is, oh, this guy's a stud, a stud. Yeah, he's a stud, and then you got Chris Collinsworth. Well, here's a guy, right? Here's a guy that's going to go out and give you this. And it's awesome to see their cliches and how they just play off it, but not an easy job by any means. And I tell you what, those guys put hours and hours into their craft, but I love how they have their go-to, their go-to sayings and stuff. So.
it is fun, and you see it now in the coaching game too. You see a lot of former players, I think, more than ever, becoming coaches. I mean, I even saw Mike Vick is a coach now at somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in Virginia, maybe. I could be wrong on that, but he's a D1, I think FCS, maybe FBS coach. But I mean, you see it with Deion Sanders. You see it all over the place now. More and more former pros want to become college head coaches, which is definitely something to be said about the salary being offered for collegiate head coaches now. I think is a big part of that. But it's yeah, the age of like retiring and just doing whatever doesn't seem to be around now. It's like these guys are so multifaceted and they have such great media training. They've been brought into an era where they're expected to be in the public light, and so they're going to continue to do that whatever, however, and whatever they can. I will say.
I guess one thing, Tucker, what do you think that draw is for bringing these players in? You think it's just the way these old players relate to the new kids, or I guess the NIL deal, right? You just need to have that. You need to be so close to these players anymore. That's why they're finding the allure of bringing a former player in. Or I guess what do you think the draw is to that?
It's a huge recruiting tactic, and Deion Sanders was a phenomenal example of it at a program that had really never been heard about, didn't get a lot of funding previously before he went to Colorado, obviously. And for them, I mean, they turned themselves into a program like overnight with him. He attracted these recruits that they had never heard of before. Obviously his sons and Travis Hunter, they all started their careers at an HBCU, which would never have been heard of for guys who are going to be, top 5 draft picks. And so, yeah, I think the biggest thing that schools see it as is a return on recruiting. I think that they feel comfortable putting crazy salaries out there, knowing that they're going to bring in crazy players through that. It The hard thing for me is like sometimes they turn out to be really good coaches, and sometimes I think they knew all along it was going to be a marketing and PR stunt. And a lot of schools are okay for a few years with it being marketing and PR stunts if it means bringing in higher caliber players, because then they think about, hey, we've elevated our status, we're bringing in these players, our social media is better, all this kind of stuff. Then we can hand the reins over to someone who's an experienced coach. And that transition from player to coach on any level is just remarkable. It really works for some people. It is really hard for others. And it just happened in the lacrosse landscape at the collegiate level. One of the greatest all-time players ended up taking a Division II head coaching job, which was like shocking to everyone. But overnight, that program has started to attract guys who never would have considered that program previously. And so, even if they have a couple mediocre seasons, it's like, hey, we're in the limelight. We're in the public's eye now. I think a lot of the time it's just getting more notoriety to a school, because what people don't consider a lot in sports is like, if you have a football team that is very present and popular in social media, you're going to have more general students go to those schools. You're going to have people go to those schools because they're just sports nuts or they want to be around that culture and that landscape. It's not just recruiting football players, you're recruiting a general audience through a lot of these hires. And I think Deion Sanders with Colorado was a great example of that because you have kids going to Colorado now that are going there to go to football games and then go to class. Like they are just there to be a part of the atmosphere, and that's attracting them as a student. So for a lot of these schools in the age and the predicted drop off in college attendance that we're going into right now, this is a great way for them to pull some marketing out of it.
Well, I was just looking up the Deion Sanders aspect of it, and it was 5-year deal for $29.5 million. And Deion Sanders' worth to Colorado as estimated at $280 million. So tenfold in 3 years. I mean, Colorado's program was almost dead there for 8-10 years. I mean, it's been a long time since they've been in the news. But they invested it, paying that money, and it paid off. Sometimes it's not going to pay off, but you look at Alabama. They gave Saban. He kind of bounced around, whatnot, and the amount of money that Alabama has gotten, and they doubled all their facilities down there. Even the university, and you get these boosters, and they're worth probably an extra $1 billion of investment in the area. Obviously Alabama is a rare occurrence, but it's one of those things where, it's a lot of money to pay a coach, but sometimes it pays off long term. But like you said, for a 3-year investment, and you go from spending $30 million and you get $300 million, that's a great return.
That's a great return.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what North Carolina is doing with Bill Belichick. Which I think the better question we should be asking right now is, does Belichick actually make it to the season for them? Because there's been a lot of rumors about him interested in some NFL gigs again, which I don't know. I mean, I've got this weird suspicion that we may not see him ever coaching a game for North Carolina. But at the end of the day, I mean, look at his recruiting class coming in right now. It's amazing. I mean, it's a phenomenal.
Well, the thing is when you're stale for a period of time, you have kind of lackluster, sub 500 for a long time. You sometimes just got to stir the pot to get that interest, and what I mean. And then you get the boosters back in, and you basically stir in the pot to see what you can kick up. Was Deion actually the head coach of Colorado, or was he the figurehead? So it's like,
Right. And
So true.
And I'd have to look at the Belichick thing too, and I don't know how that whole thing would take place. Not used to being NIL, and he's just a pro guy, so he's just going out and directing traffic and not putting up with anybody's bullshit. Well, now it's a whole different deal, and that's a big babysitting thing, And I think that I don't know, the NFL might come back and say, hey, we're going to offer you a job, and I think he's gonna take it. And,
I don't know. Do we think there's an NFL team out there willing to do that? Because I tell you what, I mean, you look at these hires and they want flashy, they want offense. The Bill Belichick's I just think in the NFL they're done. I mean, he's not a huge defensive guy.
No.
He doesn't really have a forte. His coaching tree is pretty much disbanded. Like, I don't know. The only reason I can see him coaching college is just because I think it's his last kind of hope. I think his girlfriend loves Chapel Hill, or loves the college life.
He's not graduated yet.
So, but I don't know. The only thing that keeps pulling me back to I think he's going to give it a go is just the fact of I just think guys like him in the NFL have run their course.
Yeah.
Well, I think if he came back to the NCAA 10 years ago, he would stand a chance. It's a wild, wild west now. I mean, 10 years ago, college coaches would stay around and not go to the NFL because they wouldn't have to deal with the money cap or the salary cap and whatnot. But now the NFL's be a piece of cake compared to the NCAA with recruiting and basically NIL and the free agency and just moving around parts and just the dealing with the players and their families. The NFL, at least you're just dealing with agents. You have other support staff. I think just the NCAA is just going to be an eye-opening experience for Belichick.
Yeah, I'm just like the guys that I love seeing make it, the Vic Fangios, right? Not a head coach, but yet they win a Super Bowl as a D coordinator. I think those are the type of guys that stay in the NFL. Like I said, I just think Belichick. I think he kind of got exposed a little bit when Brady went off to Tampa Bay. Um, but it's interesting. It's just great. It's a great storyline. Who else went to Rex Ryan? Was it Rex Ryan who went to USC as a D coordinator? Like just
Yeah.
these old NFL guys, right? They're just gonna go shoot their shot in college and live it up for a couple years. So
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to how this whole thing plays out with everything. And I think it's a young man's sport anymore. I listened to Nick Saban's little documentary on stuff, and he talked about the things he did 20 years ago and the things you got to do now. I think it's just, I think the wheel is going that much faster, and I think you got to really have some fast shoes to keep up. So, um, so, so moving on a little bit, and we talked a little bit here in the pre-show, Kyle and Aaron. You guys talking about district wrestling, and Tucker, you were at wrestling today too. So we'll get your fill on the college, and you guys can chime in on the high school district wrestling coming up. And my nephew's son, David Tyson, he made it for the Bobcats and heading to Des Moines. So had a hard year with some ankle problems, but yeah, it's doing good. So what do you guys think?
yeah, I'll kind of just jump off here and let Aaron go because I know Aaron's kind of the expert on the wrestling. First of all, I want to preface, I'm the Gansen who's not the wrestler. I'm the only Gansen in Dubuque County who was never a wrestler. But I tell you what, you want a pure individual sport, but yet it's still a team sport. Wrestling is your thing, right? You could be on the worst wrestling team ever and still have a shot to go to the state tournament. And this weekend was just a great testament to how good a wrestling we have in the area, right? I think Western Dubuque sent 10 of 14 guys. We had a kid, I think, maybe had 10 to 15 varsity matches under his belt. And it wasn't the fact that he wasn't good enough. He just didn't have a spot in the lineup, right? He gets the spot due to an injury, and he goes to state at 190. And it's just a great individual sport. One thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to put the state on notice here, Aaron. Very disappointed. I was in Bettendorf, and I know Bettendorf handles a lot of district wrestling events and a lot of youth stuff. But when I go to the concession stand and you have an event that isn't over until 6 o'clock at night, and we go to the concession stand at 11:52 and be told they're out of pizza, and then you ask for a hot dog, and then they're out of a hot dog. Like, come on, man. Like we're hungry. We want to eat, and you cannot run out of food by noon at a district wrestling event. But all in all, great weekend besides the little concession hiccup. I think, talking to Coach Cleary before, he said his goal was he thought if everybody wrestled the way they could send 10. And, sure enough, they sent 10. So I'm glad to see it for those boys. I know that wrestling season is a gauntlet, right? I mean, you got kids coming in I know a couple of those kids that played freshman football, they were 20, 25 pounds over what they're wrestling. And just their commitment to, what they eat and how hard they work. And it's just good to see it pay off. And best thing for the Bobcats, out of those 10 wrestlers that are going, I think only 2 of them are seniors,
Yep.
so reload a little bit here and some very winnable matches. I think I looked at the seedings the first round. I'd say over half those guys will be kind of favored to at least win their first match, which was awesome. So um, speaking of your David Tyson there, Lyle, I tell you what, the match of the tournament went to him. It was a match that he didn't win, lost it in overtime, but just a great individual experience. Left it all on the mat for 6 minutes and then some in overtime. But yeah, just a kid who just battles every match he's in. You're wrestling that 175-pound weight class. I tell you what, those 175 pounders now look nothing like what they did 20 years ago. I mean, all these kids are not an ounce of fat on them, just all muscle. I mean, it is unbelievable some of these bodies some of these high school kids have, and just how hard they work to get it. It's just they know so much more than we did 30 years ago, right? And yeah, just great physical specimens.
And David's a specimen of all specimens. That 175 pounds, that's meat and potatoes there. I mean, that's getting in the trench. You know, you got some men lighter weights, but boy, when you start rolling up them bigger weights like that and stuff, yeah, it just gets to be something else. But Aaron, go ahead and take away.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a great. It was a long day yesterday, but it was a great day, and not just for West Dubuque, but just in general. Even like the area, Hempstead sent 8, West Delaware sent 10, Wallard sent 3, Macokota sent 2, Mac Valley sent 4, Beckman sent 2, Cascade sent. I mean, I think there's 45 in our little area, so a lot to be proud of, but you know I was at the Bettendorf district yesterday, and a lot of great matches. Not just from us, but just fun to see these other schools battle it out. I mean, there was a matchup at 190 that was the number 2 and number 3 ranked kids in the state. You get to see that at districts. So it's fun to watch. And it's a long season. I mean, some of these kids. If they're playing football and they have a successful football season, they start in end of July, and it's every day. They get no breaks off between football to wrestling, and wrestling's a long, grueling season and putting your body through a lot. Watching, being disciplined, there was yesterday. West Dubuque sent 10, and I think there was 6 or 7 wrestlebacks that for 3rd and 4th, and they take the top 3, and they went ahead and able to go ahead and push their way through there. And that's a mental challenge. You sit there for 8.5 hours and you weigh in, and you're just trying to win your matches and before you lose 2. And fortunately for the kids that made it, they were able to push themselves through. And I thought some kids, at the beginning of the season, I said that there'd be, I was thinking 5 or 6, and there's some kids that got better and better. Isaiah Streef, just January 17th, wrestled the kid from Iowa City Liberty and got majored 22-11 by him. And then in the second round, he went ahead and lost 4-1. And then to go to state for the 4th place match, he went ahead and actually tech-falled the kid. I think it was 16-0. So in a month's time, he went ahead and went from almost getting tech-falled to tech-falling the kid. So, hats off to these kids that just stay with it and get after it. And, just it's a mental game. Wrestling, like you said, it's a team sport, but it's an individual sport. I mean, it's basically you're all out there by yourself. You got no one else to blame. It's fun to watch how these kids can push through. I'm just happy that some of these kids, Brady Shackleton at 190, he was kind of in and out of the lineup, and then wrestling a little bit of JV and here and there, and then he was able to come back yesterday and had some great matches. And looking at his bracket before the brackets come out, you got the number 2 and number 3 ranked kids in the state in your bracket, and that's kind of frightening, to think that you're going to make it to state. And he wrestled excellent yesterday. And another match I can think of is Garrett Kleesner. He had to win at heavyweight, and came down to holding on with just 10 seconds, just holding on to a leg and able to qualify. David Tyson, we talked about that match. I mean, everyone was watching that match. It was overtime, couple seconds left, and he ended up getting taken down out of bounds right at the end. They awarded the 3 points for the takedown, but it was an extremely gassing match, but just an excellent match as a viewer to watch, just to see both those kids go at it. So it was a long, fun day, and it's a quick turnaround too, because the wrestlers for 3A, they wrestle at 8:00 on Wednesday. So you go down Tuesday morning, stay in a hotel, manage your weight, get a workout in, go in, weigh in at 6:30 in the morning, and wrestle a match or two on Wednesday, and then do the same thing. You come back 6:30 in the morning, weigh in on Thursday, same thing Friday, weigh in. I mean, it's a lot for those kids to go ahead and basically living in a hotel room for 4 or 5 days. So to manage it, but they see the light at the end of the tunnel as far as all their hard work, for the last 3 months of being in the wrestling room, in the weight room, and being disciplined as far as their diets and whatnot. So um, it's a very cool experience to be down at Wells Fargo too, when you're able to walk out on the mat and you see 10,000 people up watching you. So it's a unique experience. Something that they definitely will not forget.
I guess one kind of feedback I'd like, Aaron, is just you as a wrestling guy, right? You've been in the sport a long time, and you've kind of seen some of the rule changes and whatnot. So many times I see rule changes in a sport. Obviously this year you had the 3-point takedown change, which I think as a viewer has been amazing for the sport, right? Like, you force the action, you're rewarding kids for takedowns, but then they also made some other, slight rule changes with like the stalling and carrying kids out of bounds and edge of the mat stuff. That's one thing I haven't seen consistently enforced all year, I guess. Did you see any of that? Like, I'm all for rule changes, but when your people aren't enforcing those little things, how I relate it is to like basketball, right? In high school basketball this year, they put in a flop warning. Well, I flat out talked to officials that I'm not going to call that. I'm just going to call a block and foul or a charge. And I'm like,
Right.
why change the rule if you're going to just continue to do that? And I thought the one thing that I saw as a, kind of an impartial wrestling fan, I mean, obviously, I have my favorites, but just watching some of the matches, I just felt like there was some inconsistent enforcement with some of that stuff, I guess.
There is, as far as the rules change, as far as the scoring, I do like the 3-point takedown. I wasn't in favor for it when college went to it. But it forces the action, and you go ahead and get 2 takedowns and let the guy up. And now it's 4-2 with the old rules. Now it's 6-2. This is a whole different gamut now. The one thing I think they need to look at is the tech falls. These matches are getting over in the first period because you're getting 3 points and teching these kids. They need to go ahead and move it to, because at 15 points is a tech fall. Make it 18, and then like the major, make that 9 points or so. Just tweak a little fine things, but I enjoy the rule changes to rewarding the offensive wrestler. And every couple of years they tweak with the rules with the out of bounds and back points as far as what they're calling. If they're in the cylinder or whatnot. The consistency, some referees just aren't, they're still stuck in the ways they've been doing it for a long time, and they just see what they see. And, it's just getting used to the new rules, and the kids now are phenomenal. They're quicker, stronger, and some officials, there's a shortage of them, but some officials just aren't able to keep up to that speed. They're out of place, but it's one of those things where you go ahead and make these rule changes to make the sport better, and I think that's what they're trying to get to. And as a fan, no one wants to go ahead and see a 1-0 match. Everyone wants to see the fireworks. So force them to be active, and that's what you come to watch and to enjoy and cheer on, because I'll enjoy a 1-0 match, but I don't want to see a whole entire duel or tournament 1-0. So I want to see some fireworks. I want to see some action. So I enjoy the rule changes as far as the scoring part of the takedowns and the near falls. So
I will tell you the one thing that I've seen, the guys that can utilize the edge of the mats, right? You can shorten some of those matches. You can keep your toe in, right? I've seen a lot more action at the edge of the matches or at the edge of the mat And the guys that are obviously the most successful are the guys scoring points at the end and knowing how to keep their feet in and, knowing how to use that to their advantage. I thought that's been an interesting rule change too. Just a lot more action all through the mat, not just the center of the mat, but yeah, just an awesome day. And like I said, district wrestling is kind of encompasses everything you've seen all year, just some of the best wrestling and some of the most, I tell you what, there's some kids that, feel bad for some of those seniors, right? And in one match short, and like you said, seeing kids that you've been tech falled for earlier in the year and now you're wrestling them and you're beating them, look at 150, that Risman kid was wrestling, that PV kid, he had been beat by him 2-1 and he ends up sticking him in the third period. And, kid just didn't handle it well, ran out of the gym, out into the parking lot. He was it was a huge win for our 150 pounder and just knows now he can compete with anybody. But what a season. I tell you what, I hope our area can have some success down there. You did mention Cascade. I think they sent 3 wrestlers, which is the most they've sent in I think since like 2000. So big big props to them as well.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think like I said, I'm thinking. Go ahead, Kyle or Lyle.
I think the wrestling overall in Dubuque County is, very, very healthy. And I think all of our sports are very healthy, all the way around. We've got a very active, sporting community of multi things and of multi-sport athletes, David Tysert or Garrett Kleesner or the 215 pounder, Alex, them guys, football players, and all geared up for that, and then they drop some weight and realign and take off, and them guys are just champions. It's just crazy.
I will say one thing that I'm in favor of, and I will say I love this dead week that we have in July. These kids run so hard for so many weeks, and it forces a week to just focus on family. I will tell you what, as a guy who's been through it, and seeing kids go through it, Aaron, your son was through it last year, right? You play in the state football championship on a Saturday and you got your first meet the next week, right? Or you're cutting weight and you got to make.
Right.
I still remember back in 01, we played in the state championship for football. We had the Cascade Jamboree on the following Tuesday. So we literally had practice on Monday and played in a basketball game on Tuesday.
Yeah.
That is one thing that I would like to be interested to see if they'd ever have a no contact period, after those fall seasons. Because you look at those fall seasons, right? They go hard. Volleyball goes hard, right? Football goes hard, and these kids, they need some time for themselves. And it'll be interesting if we ever see that. I don't know if it'll be in that time frame or if it'll be, a different time frame, but it'll be interesting.
Fortunately for those kids that are able to go ahead and compete in those state tournaments at the end of the season, that's a good thing. But it also affects, like you said, the other season's already starting. But it'd be tough to implement a dead week in between because say football and all of a sudden you got basketball starting or volleyball starting. Basically, whenever the final is, it's the following week is the other competition dates. It'd be nice to go ahead and give those kids a break, but it's one of those things where success breeds success. So you take the good and the bad. The seasons are longer for those kids, but that's a good thing because they had a lot of success. But it's hard on those kids. They just need a little mental break to decompress. But some of those kids that are football starts end of July, and say they play basketball or wrestling, they're successful in that. They go into track, and they're at the school, from August to May for 10, 11, 12 hours a day. I mean, it's a grind for those kids to go ahead and do the schoolwork and do their after school activities. And then, when there is competitions, they're not getting home till 11:30 at night, and expected to be back up at school at 7:30 in the morning to do it all over again. So it is good for those kids to go ahead and get a little break. I think that it's necessary to, just to hit a little reset button and give them a little bit of breathing room. But, for those other kids that aren't able to compete on those teams that have that success, they're waiting 2, 3, 4 weeks before that season starts up. So they have that built-in decompression time. So it's when you're successful, you also have to take the downfalls
with the
with it
bad.
too,
Yep.
so.
I know one thing. So every year, these associations send out end of the year surveys, and one of the things for girls basketball coaches and officials, they really questioned us on the schedule, and what would we like to see out of moving forward the girls high school basketball schedule. Obviously, they know their numbers are hurting, and they're looking for ways to make it more enjoyable for the kids. One thing I will say from like an Iowa perspective, we're pretty jealous that Christmas break time frame's a lot of dead time, right? You lose a lot of
Yep.
momentum. And really, those kids don't get a whole lot of time off anyways. They're getting 3 days for Christmas, and then they're back in the gyms, right? And they'll play a scrimmage here or there, but nothing really organized. So we've been pushing for some holiday tournaments. It'll be curious. That's the one question they ask. What would you like to see out of the girls' basketball season? Would you like to see a shorter season with more games, longer season with less games? So it's one question they're asking themselves, and I just, like I said, always looking for the best way to do things and always looking to change. And it'll be interesting to see if the state of Iowa ever comes around on the holiday tournament schedule during the winter time frame. But
I know Illinois and Wisconsin, Minnesota, they do a lot of those holiday tournaments where it's, 2, 3 days where they'll play, the tournament schedule. But, that'd be kind of nice to see, because you can go ahead and get kind of the feel for the state tournament. It's kind of a precursor of, hey, we got to play back-to-back games here. How are we going to handle this? Get a couple overnight stays or whatnot. Just how do you function when you're out of your element? Just to, with the unknown, you go ahead and look at your schedule. Like, we have this team on these dates. Well, you're playing a tournament, and it's like, all right, now we have this team won, so now we have to prepare differently. How are we going to go ahead and function being out of our elements and staying in a hotel? And I don't think you need to go ahead and do that multiple times a season, but it's good for those kids to slightly be out of their element, and you get a lot of growth that way too. If you're always just by the book or going ahead and having a structure, you can control a lot of the surprise, but sometimes it's best to force the kids to adjust and figure out how are they going to go ahead and handle certain situations.
Yeah, I think these kids are so, I don't know, seems like they're resilient, but yet they're still human anymore, and Tucker, you could probably respond to this too, I mean, it's, wrestling's a tough thing, and like Aaron, you said, you're kind of a team thing, but when you walk out on that rubber cushion, you're on your own, it's on your own deal, and good, bad, lose, or otherwise, you still got to get up and you got to figure out how to start all over again.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think timing and kind of to what Kyle said, I think every youth through college level sport in America outside of, your D1 FBS, football, is trying to decide with what's the right model, what's the right downtime, and I think a lot of it, unfortunately, comes down to funding and facility availability is kind of the biggest part that dictates a lot of sports. I think about us in our conference, a lot of ADs in our conference want to play more games in a shorter amount of days in the same venue to cut down on overall cost and get more games out of it. But the one thing I constantly caution people with that situation in any sport is, the human body can only do so much in so many days. And if you're trying to have more competitions because you want to save money on it, your focus is in the wrong areas. And it's not about the athletes then. Then it's about somebody's pocketbook. And that's a scary thing, I think, within the U.S. model of youth sports as a whole right now, is we're focused on, having players play more events, more games, getting out there more, being more recruitable, more. But what we, I think, often forget nowadays is we should be focusing on maximizing the performance that they are able to put out. So, hey, if it means taking an extra off day between competitions or whatever it may be, if that means they're going to wrestle better, play football better, whatever it may be, if they are going to do that better with that extra off day and therefore be better at their sport. I think that should be our biggest focus. But yeah, I know. I mean, I know everything within, youth through high school sports in the U.S. comes down to funding and comes down to, who's putting up the cost and all that kind of stuff. And it's an interesting one that I think Iowa has more put together than the rest of the country. I will say. I think the focus on community and athletes within that community is still more prevalent here than a lot of states in the U.S., which is cool.
And I kind of leading off on that is, I remember I remember a coach hearing a wrestling coach talking a while ago, a long time ago, at the point he was talking to a wrestler and he says, hey, he goes, I get it. I was a college wrestler, and if you need a day or two off to gather your bearings and get back to home base, then, I understand it. I get it, and by all means, and whether that individual did, I'm assuming they did, but that's kind of the whole thing. That's what's going to come back down to, and then you're going to lose an athlete because he's burnt out.
100%. 100%.
Well, I think, like you said, certain youth sports are about the money and whatnot, but it should be more about the development, right? You can go ahead and go sit at a 2-day tournament and play 4 games, or you could have went ahead and had practice and got more shots in, because you go to the tournament and you're 8th guy off the bench, you might get a shot or two. You go ahead and go to the gym for 2 days and you just got 400 shots off. So I think it should be more about the development and opportunities for the kids, for everyone, because you're going to, like you said, you can go ahead and pile more games on in a shorter period of time, but you're not getting the same opportunities and shooting as many baskets or getting as many balls to hit, and and you're not, like you said, you only have so many wear and tears on your body as far as competition wise. But if you can hone in your craft and give more opportunities, practice and development, and work on the finer tunes of things at a younger age, I think it's going to pay off as the students get older. I mean, you can go ahead and just keep traveling here and there and basically just you're staying in hotels just for clout. I mean, just to say, hey, we go this place, we go this place. Well, you can go ahead and get the same opportunities done in a shorter period of time and spend a lot less money.
That's so true. Yeah. You just opened a can of worms that I couldn't agree more with there. That's
yeah. We could spend the rest of the night on there.
That's the truest statement there is, and I'll make a very simple statement, and it is: look back at some of the greatest athletes to ever play in their respective sports, and one commonality you will find across those athletes is they were shooting extra hoops in their backyard, taking extra slap shots in their backyard. They were in the gym on their own. One commonality about a lot of the greatest athletes that are out there playing today and did play was they didn't get caught up in all the fancy stuff. They got caught up in the development. And I think there's definitely a healthy balance of both. But I think that I think the money game of sports today likes to tell people that they have to do something this exact way to succeed at the next level. And that is, I will tell every youth player at any level of sport, there is not only one route. There is never only one route.
Well, just in general, you can go ahead and be average and get opportunity to play in all-star games and fly anywhere here. It's not really an all-star game. It's basically, can you afford to go there? Basically, you're going ahead and paying to play. So to be selected, well, you got the invitation, because they send them out to everyone, and you gotta go ahead and just do it. And I have no problems going ahead and certain kids and certain people and different opportunities come around to try things out, but I don't think 9-10-year-olds should be going ahead and traveling nonstop to go play XYZ for 2 hours, and then they're stuck in an airport for 3 days. I think it'd been time well spent just staying in the gym and working on getting better.
Right,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Right.
I got two final words of advice to any, and this is coming from a college coach, but this is coming from somebody that's went through this with every sport. And it is, if you are considering putting your kid in a travel sport, there are two very important questions to ask. Number one is look at the coaching staff, look at the history of the program, and understand how much your child can be developed. Don't just focus on the cool swag. Don't just focus on the cool trips. Focus on the actual development and success that that staff will offer you that you can't find elsewhere, right? And second to that, if your kid's really young, I would even venture to say through high school from what I've seen, but if you have a travel organization that tells you that your child should play that sport and that sport only year round, and they need to be dedicated specifically to that sport and nothing else out there, they're lying to your face. Again,
One hundred percent.
go back to any of the greatest athletes that we're seeing today. They were dual, if not tri-sport athletes, and they were really good at all of them, and they were good because they had the opportunity to develop skills that they wouldn't find in one singular sport. So I think travel sports are really great, but do your research and understand that there's so much to learn out there from every sport you play, and that's why you see these guys who are great at wrestling, great at football, great at baseball, great at all these different things, is they are athletes. They are not just one sport figure. They are doing everything and learning different muscle movement and different understanding and different IQ from every sport to then take them to the next level in one sport or two. Could be two in some cases.
And not just male athletes, Tucker,
All athletes.
female athletes as well. Just because, like, I've seen the best volleyball players play basketball, the best basketball
Amen.
players do something different. Like, you just teach your body how to move in different ways. We're not robots. Learn
Yep.
and
So
learn
true.
how to move, and that's the number one thing. So
You know, and we were talking earlier, talking about wrestling too, and high school wrestling, and then Tucker, you were down at Iowa City today watching Northwestern and the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, I've been everywhere over the last 7 days, but this was a great one today to kind of come back to Iowa and be in a real Iowa scenario in the Midwest, I would say specifically. But I love it, man. I guess the backstory for me with wrestling is I grew up high school years in Kent, Ohio, and so I had a lot of access to Kent State University and their wrestling program and watched a lot of wrestling growing up. And while I never got into it, I think I was a little deep on my side of being past the age of learning a lot of things. I love the sport. I think it's beautiful. I think people learn things in wrestling they won't learn anywhere else. Some of the best lacrosse players I recruit were also phenomenal wrestlers. There is a direct crossover from that sport, I would say, to any sport. I think wrestling connects to every sport. But the one thing that today I was thinking as I was watching these guys wrestle was the level of physical and mental endurance and focus that is really not as present in any other sport. That, I remember going back to high school where I was at, my buddies would have to cut weight all the time. They'd have to gain weight. They'd have to do all these things. And they were so dang dedicated to accomplishing their goals right there. I was mind blown at that age that there were guys that were going to be that focused to achieving something. And I think that the lessons you learn there is about, you have to go through the struggle and the grit to then find the success and the rewards. So I think the the lessons learned in wrestling are very applicable to life. I think that's what comes into your life later in age, which is what we hope to teach every youth through sport. That's what we're really installing as life lessons. But today was beautiful, man. It's to be in Carver and to see these people battle it out and really put everything on the line, and then to see an audience. We only had like 5,500 I think there today, but to see an audience engaged. And I don't know that I've ever watched a sport where I saw more people completely focused at what was going on than in wrestling. I can go to a basketball game, a football game, whatever. Half the people are there to booze and have a great time and socialize. Today, I really took in the fact that it was dead silent most of the time because everybody was watching, everybody was taking note, everybody was thinking about every move and every, mannerism on the floor and everything. And I was just sitting there, man. I don't think I've ever seen 5,000 people in a sporting event more focused on a single thing going on between two people than today. And that was, as a coach, that was, oh man, I was like, this is one of the coolest things ever.
That's pretty cool to even hear. I guess I can imagine that, just complete sense and look around to see everybody just looking at one
I,
spot, you know.
it's the level of care and focus is just it's amazing. And to say that we're a wrestling state, I think would be an understatement. And I learned that very quickly when I moved here. But it's cool to see how supportive these guys are. I thought it was also interesting. You hear a lot about like Spencer Lee and kind of the bigger guys out there. But for a lot of these wrestlers, they're just average people when they get their street clothes on and they leave the arena. I noticed a lot of them are leaving today, and they weren't getting, tracked down for autographs. They weren't getting hollered at for photos. They were just walking out with the crowd. They were very humble, very regular guys, and that's not something I really see in a lot of other sports. And I thought that was about as human and relatable as you can come down to.
Yeah, and I think that goes well put for the wrestling fan as well. I think they're just the same
Hundred
type,
percent, 100%. Yeah, I enjoyed that. It's not. I had never seen a wrestling there at Iowa before, and that was to see that today was really unique. But again, just left me with profound feeling of the level of focus and determination that these athletes, but also the fans and just the whole community engage upon. That's a special community for sports. That's a very special community.
So
Yeah, I think one thing with that, as far as those fans that are, they follow these guys that have been wrestling, up through high school, and so they're almost it, they know so much about these kids that are wrestling, and a lot of the fans that are there, they obviously around wrestling their entire life, so they know the struggles and the sacrifices that those kids kind of go through, and they're just they can relate. You go ahead and any other sport, you have fandoms, but it's not, you don't relate directly as what you do in wrestling, where you've lived it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right on. So, all right, a quick speed round. Anybody got something they want to get out, talk about real quick?
If anyone wants to, go ahead.
I know one thing is I was captivated last night. I'm sitting in a bar in St. Donatus, and I'm watching USA Canada hockey. And two seconds in, we're brawling. 5 seconds in, we're brawling. 9 seconds in, we're brawling. And I tell you what, not a big hockey guy, like my Dubuque Fighting Saints, like watching it in person, not a big TV guy. But boy, did that sport grab some fans from America last night. And I tell you what, I've never been so proud to be an American. It doesn't matter if you like it or leave it, whatever. You had USA standing up for their national anthem and getting after the Canadians. So I don't know why they got to be so mad about maybe going to be our 51st state. Sorry, that was a joke, but I tell you
That's a
what,
different podcast.
from a sports fan, awesome. Get after it. Those Bash brothers are staples in the United States hockey family for the rest of their life. So just love to see it. And just remember, as a sports fan, don't ever be afraid to watch another sport, because you never know what might happen. And that is the classic example.
You know what? I could not agree more. I also props to the NHL for putting on an awesome event like that. That is pro sports reaching out and doing the right model of a tournament in a different way and captivating an audience. Because I love hockey. I felt the exact same way watching that. I had twofold feeling, and there's a little lesson in this, as most things I think I talk about that related to last night. You saying that. My first night in Canada last weekend, we went to go see one of my players at Clark, his little brother, who's 9 years old, was playing a youth hockey league. So our first night in Canada, we're in an old barn built in the 30s, freezing cold outside, watching little kids play Canadian hockey. And I was mesmerized by these kids at this age and their skill level and their finesse. And then afterward, we see these even smaller kids come on. And I look at this kid's dad and I go, "What's going on over there? Is this, are they kidding?" And he goes, "No, this is the 4-year-old bracket. There's kids out there skating and staying up on their skates while handling a puck at 4 years old." And I thought that is the coolest sports thing I have ever seen. Then last night to see USA win, I'm sitting there thinking, man, a lot of our guys didn't start playing until middle school, maybe even high school.
Right.
So for us to beat this country that I saw kids skating at 4 years old, I thought, man, that's a great level of determination, and it's never too late to get into something. And that was, yeah, as patriotic as it gets. And they asked one of the guys who's got dual citizenship. I know his mom is Canadian. They said, well, why didn't you play for Canada? You know what's up with that? Why didn't you consider that? And he just stone cold. I never considered it. I'm American. I'm American as it gets. And I was like, yeah, man, let the eagle fly over and play some rock music. Here we go. Here we go.
Boy, yeah.
There was a lot of pride went one way before the puck dropped last night. So
Literally.
yeah, it was fun to see. Like I said, I don't watch a whole lot of hockey, but I follow along a little bit. And then X today, there was a lot of different tweets and stuff that were sent out that were very entertaining and background music put on. So it was interesting to follow along.
Oh. Yeah, it's funny, and we talked about a dynamic bunch of sports last night, and I guess kind of like the football game that was last weekend, the hockey game last night. I guess you got 3 fights in 9 seconds. I don't know, don't get much better than that, I guess. So
no, well, like you said, the NHL, props to them to get some excitement for that, to bring in different fans, and then you got the NBA All-Star game this week or whatnot, and that's just kind of fallen by the wayside the last couple of years. I mean, you got people in the dunk contest that don't even play in the NBA, and they're hurting there. They're missing their market.
yeah,
They also had their NBA team play against their G League team, their minor league team, and the G League team won.
Yeah, it's they're missing some stuff there. They got to reconfigure.
Yeah. I used to do work for the NBA years ago. I still thought it was the boringest game I've ever seen in my life. A lot of showboating and grandstanding, and I was standing, sitting underneath the basket. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a sport that, like, progressively as it gets older, it gets worse.
Yeah.
And by the NBA, like, turn it on in May when the playoffs are on.
Right.
Before then, like, they're not playing defense. They're not playing everything they've learned to get to that point. They forget, right? They know how to score, but they don't want to play defense until they have to. And the American people
it's either a dunk or a 32-foot-3. I mean, it's
right.
There's no plays, and and like you said, the action doesn't get good until May, where hey, we're 6 games out. We got to go ahead and start locking this down. As far as the average fan going to a game, you go ahead and take a family there, and you take your kids there. You spend $1,500 on room and tickets, and take off work, and all of a sudden you get there, and 7 of the players are out for load management.
Right.
So
right.
you're just like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And then you got players making $100 million for a 3-year contract, and you never heard of them before. So they're disassociating the normal fan base.
Yeah. Well put. Very well put. Very well. So, all right, guys. I tell you what a great conversation we had here tonight on the podcast. So you can catch us on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and on Spotify. Don't be afraid to email us. I will put the email in the title. It's Donchaknow Podcast at Gmail, and send an email out if you got any questions or anything you want to hear, and we'll certainly try to address it. So for Tucker LaBelle, Kyle Gansen, and Aaron Birds, I'm Lyle Tyson, and this is Don't You Know?